Cri Anishinaabe, Ho.
On July 26, 1615, the Nipissings are preparing to greet a very special visitor. Samuel de Champlain is the first major European explorer to carry out his colonization mission without resorting to methods of violence or conquest. Contrary to the colonists of New England or New Spain, Champlain doesn't hunt down or kill the inhabitants of the native villages. He doesn't set fire to the long houses of my ancestors to rebuild a European village on top of them. Instead, he chose to build a country alongside its first inhabitants, attempting more or less to do it with them and not against them. This vision, revolutionary at the time, will mark the increasingly crossbred culture of the French-Canadian pioneers. By and large, French Canadians will enjoy friendly relations with the First Nations.
The Nipissings are part of the great Algonquin family. Ever since their first contact with the Algonquins at Tadoussac 12 years before, the French explorers have become familiar with the Anishinaabe culture and have even blended some aspects of it into their own. The Algonquin Anishinaabe live mostly in small clans, numbering a few dozen people led by the eldest father of the group. They are nomads. They move their encampments according to the rhythm of the seasons, in harmony with the gifts of Mother Earth and the cycle of the medicine wheel. They have learned to fish using a harpoon and a net. They dry their catches instead of using salt. They enjoy the small berries that the whole family gathers together during the summer, including the famous blueberry. Some berries are associated with the 13 moons like the June strawberries, the July raspberries, and the August blackberries. The elder hunters and trappers take every opportunity to teach important values to the young, including how to respect life and nature. The Anishinaabe, like all the First Nations, honor the sacrifice of the animals they harvest by giving a second life to each and every part of them. In winter, the Algonquin snowshoes, their toboggans, and above all, the warmth offered by their small tents made of bark and called wigwams are greatly appreciated. They are made in either the shape of a cone or a dome. These wigwams can even be taken down and transported. In spring, they have learned to tap the maple trees to boil their sweet sap into syrup. The French have been welcomed with open arms by the many tribes that share a common language marked by often repeated sounds like wa, si, ma, tu, and ni. All these people implore the help of Kichemanitu, the Great Spirit, to whom they make offerings of the 4 sacred herbs. Tobacco, associated with the East, purifies the mouth before speaking and helps to clear the spirit when it is offered to Mother Earth, for instance, by placing it at the foot of a tree. Sage, associated with the South, reduces negative energy. It is burnt during purification ceremonies known as smudges. Smoke rising from the burning sage goes directly to the Creator. Cedar, associated with the West, offers protection and is ideal to start a fire. It is also used to make powerful herbal teas for healing. And finally, sweetgrass, associated with the North, summons positive energy through its pleasant odor. When it is woven, sweetgrass teaches us about kindness, since it bends without breaking. The French have exchanged their small boats for a faster way of traveling, the birch bark canoe. The entire Anishinaabe family travels together, and it is the Algonquin women who carry the canoe and the packs over the portage route, while the men guard the clan.
Long after the time of Champlain and Étienne Brûlé, The First Nations people like the Ojibwe and even my Nipissing ancestors continue to give a warm welcome to those who come visit them on their traditional lands. There is an effort to find the balance needed to make living alongside one another possible, by respecting each other's differences as well as Mother Earth, while at the same time appreciating our common traits. Both groups discover each other, learn each other's language, get to know each other better, and gain mutual acceptance. The young women of the land who open their hearts to the newcomers with an open mind are the source of the love Canadians have today for the wide open spaces and the wonders of the natural world. That's how, for the last 400 years, people from abroad have come here and enriched their future by joining with the people of the land to create a new world.
While staying and resting among the Nipissing, Samuel de Champlain realizes that, contrary to what Tissot told him, the Nipissings aren't a group of dangerous sorcerers. Instead, these people of the shallow water are quite friendly and have some good healers living among them.
The Nipissings gave us a very welcome reception. They took the trouble to go fishing and hunting in order to treat me with the greatest courtesy possible. The dress of these people differs in no way from that of the Montagnais and the Algonquins.
It's believed that the Nipissings are the inventors of the birch bark canoe. There are around 700 souls living in this village. In his conversations with them, Champlain learns that the Nipissings travel as far as Sault Ste. Marie. There, they trade European goods they've obtained with other nations from as far away as Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. They confirm an important fact for Champlain. The Nipissing sometimes travel via the Sturgeon River near present-day Sturgeon Falls to the famous Sea of the North, Hudson's Bay. Ironically, Nicolas de Vignau's lie was full of truth. These Anishinaabe really do travel up to the Sea of the North. Did Nicolas really venture there? During the celebration under a starry sky, Champlain's dream returns to haunt him even more than before.
Today, all around Lake Nipissing, there are native reservation communities. When you go by car from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls, you pass through the reserve that belongs to a branch of my ancestors, the Nipissing First Nation. In Garden Village, proud elders like Virginia Goulet keep the oral tradition alive. Virginia is duty-bound to tell the legends of our ancestors without changing a single word. George Cucci, our retired policeman, has given himself a life mission of helping the young people of his community to rediscover their traditional culture. Now, a new generation can grow up with the pride that their grandparents were denied. For instance, Blair Bocage carries within him the spirits of his ancestors that resonates through his powerful voice. Energetic youth like Andrea Goulet can openly celebrate their pride in being Anishinaabe. At long last, traditions that had been away are now being shared, as demonstrated by the talented Zoe McLeod. 400 years after Champlain, proud Métis parents like Chantal Vézina are helping students rediscover the customs of the land by presenting them in schools. Bob Desbiens Werner, a proud Métis and authentic trapper, is also taking his message to the young. How is it that so many First Nations people of the previous generations came to lose their pride of being native? Like many of the country's First Nations, the world of my Algonquin Anishinaabe ancestors suffered an even greater upheaval starting in the 1850s and the establishment of Confederation. Under British rule, the government enacted the Indian Act. This racist law gave rise to a whole series of territorial, ethnic, and social problems. My ancestors were forced off their land and then put away in reserves where their right to work was restricted. And the government went so far as to forcefully take away our Anishinaabe or Iroquois children, to place them in Indian residential schools to save them, assimilate them, and kill the Indian in the child.
Indian residential schools. How shameful! It's exactly for reasons like that that my father, Buddy, fled from Africa. The Indian residential schools were special schools established by the Canadian government at the time of Confederation to prevent Indians from being Indians. When we went to Timmins to put on a show with L'Écho d'un Peuple troupe, I had the honor of meeting an exceptional woman, Micheline Boisvert. Like 150,000 other Aboriginals in this country, Micheline was a young child when she was taken from her home and placed in an Indian residential school. There, she no longer had the right to speak the language of her Algonquin ancestors. They cut her hair and burned her traditional clothes. She was forced to forget and deny all of her native culture in order to become a good little Canadian girl. Like all the other native children, she was underfed and physically punished. Micheline was 15 years old when she left this cultural concentration camp. She was completely lost, totally upset. And you know what? This story took place right here in Canada. And do you know when the last Indian residential school was closed? In 1996. When Micheline told us her story, we all had tears in our eyes and shivers down our backs. I don't know how, but this incredible woman found the courage to get back on her feet. Later, her and her husband decided to open the doors of their small house in Chapleau in northern Ontario. Micheline and Claude welcomed and raised 49 children. They gave a lot of love to all these orphaned or poor children. What they gave them was a new life.
On July 29th, after 2 days of rest among the Nipissings, the expedition begins paddling down the river that will come to be known as the French River. At the time, this river was part of the equivalent of today's Trans-Canada Highway. The French River is fast-flowing and dangerous. One needs to be a strong paddler and undertake perilous portages to avoid having his canoe shattered against the rocky banks.
We proceeded down it some 35 leagues and descended several little falls by land and by water. Our savages proceeded to gather some squashes, which were acceptable to us. We did not lack for blueberries and strawberries. Otherwise, we should have been in danger of being reduced to dire straits.
Even today, the famous French River remains both a mythical and a legendary place. The bonds of friendship between thousands of native and francophone paddlers were forged with each stroke of the paddle. As he travels down the river, Champlain is constantly thinking about the lands north of the French River and the riches they contain. For instance, the copper mines he's been told about. He also dreams of the day when he'll return here to build a country. Here in the north, beyond this legendary river, many francophone villages like Ouellet, Alban, Monnetteville, or Noëlleville will spring up. 400 years later, just to the north of here, an important community of Franco-Ontarians will make their mark on the Ontario Francophone cultural scene. In the greater Sudbury area, they will create the famous Nuit sur l'Étang concert, the Théâtre du Nouvel-Ontario, and the Franco-Ontarian flag. Proud Métis, like Melissa Rose White, will proudly sing about their origins. A little over 100 years ago, miners from all over the world came here to plant the roots of the future of their families by digging into the rock of this new Ontario. On the 21st of June, on National Aboriginal Day, in Sudbury, like all over the country, major festivities are held to share the culture of my ancestors. Métis and Franco-Ontarian leaders show their pride by dreaming of how they too might improve their new world. Take the young Mélanie Rose Frappier, who's become an inspiring ambassador known throughout the country. Or the artists and artisans of this area that created the magnificent Canetta 1534 show. As we can discover through the works of young artists inspired by their elders, Aboriginals are more than ever models that can inspire a whole new generation of proud and crossbred people. Our Franco-Ontarian and Canadian cultures would truly not be the same without their huge contribution.
Ici dans le Nord.
Champlain's echo will resound loudly in many faces and places in northern Ontario, where even Anglophones will learn the language of Molière to endear themselves to their francophone neighbors. Un jour, j'irai dans le Nord, dreamt Champlain and Étienne Brûlé. And, like every paddle stroke on a French river, the echo of their pride will resound strongly in this land of the boreal forest bordering Lake Superior, from Sault Ste. Marie to Thunder Bay, and even Timmins, where a whole community will be built from gold. Many artists will give a voice to this northern pride, like Steph Paquette, the talented Céleste Lévy, and the band En Bref. This pride will echo throughout the land of the forest giants and the spruce kingdom in a constellation of francophone villages like Fauquier, Dubreuilville, Opasatika, and Lone Lac, or in the heart of other indomitable communities like Hearst and Kapuskasing, where the heirs of Champlain celebrate their pride during the Saint Jean-Baptiste party. Le soleil se lève au nord, why not? For a century and a half after Champlain, young explorers will continue to search for the route to China by going northwest. It's the case of the young La Vérendrye brothers who, heading out from Fort Kaministiquia at the head of Lake Superior, will push the boundaries of Nouvelle-France right up to the Rocky Mountains. It is in honor of these young dreamers that the French language high school in Thunder Bay bears the name La Vérendrye. 400 years after Champlain, people as passionate as he was continue to guide others in discovering the beauty of their neck of the woods, like André and Eliane Bernier in Smooth Rock Falls, through their tour company, Northern Spirit Adventures.
Ici dans le Nord.
The North? What about the real North? In Ontario, the northern roads stop at the halfway mark. And yet, there are a whole bunch of small native communities in this other half of Ontario, lying further north. Even 400 years later, Ontarians know little more about this huge territory than did Samuel de Champlain himself. At home, my mother Hélène always had huskies, and I never knew why. But by asking her some questions, I started to find out a whole bunch of things about her, and about myself. When she was 9 years old, my mother lived for a year among the James Bay Cree and Moosonee. Later, when she was a student, my mother, in part to reconnect with the culture of our Anishinaabe ancestors, went to live with the Ojibwe and the Cree on the Webequie and Deer Lake reserves in northwestern Ontario. The only way to get there was by plane. Certain Cree families have always lived without running water or electricity, and in complete harmony with nature. Hélène, my mother, even spent a year among the Inuit north of Hudson's Bay. Her job as a young recreational officer gave her the opportunity of visiting many Inuit villages in the Northwest Territories. My mother really likes the traditional games people showed her up there. A lot of these games are based on an important value for Aboriginals: cooperation. She also learned that to face the winters, the Inuit learned how to laugh a lot. Like my Kokumanahe and like Champlain, my mother enjoys drawing and painting. I've inherited this passion and this talent from her. Now everything is beginning to make more sense to me. The walls of our house are perhaps the gallery exhibiting the visions and dreams of our ancestors.
Arriving at the mouth of the French River, Champlain's expedition comes across 300 natives with a particular hairstyle, the cheveux relevés or high hairs. They are the Ndatawat, the Outaouais or Ottawa tribe, and are related to the Ojibways. Impressed by their appearance, Champlain gets out his pad and makes a drawing of 4 of them. These Algonquin Hurons live in the Lake Michigan Peninsula area that extends from the south of Lake Superior to Manitoulin Island, the island of our great Manitou.
They had come into this place for drying the fruit called blueberries to serve for manna in winter, and when they can find nothing else.
400 years later, on Manitoulin Island, every summer a big powwow still takes place. People of all origins are welcome to come and experience this great sharing. The paddlers have now reached a huge body of water. Champlain is happy to have finally made it to this famous Sea of the West that he has heard so much about.
Very abundant in very good fish, in trout which are enormously large, as long as 4 feet and a half, and pike, and a certain kind of sturgeon, a very large fish and of remarkable excellence.
Champlain then tastes the water of the sea and is dumbfounded. The water isn't salty. He hasn't found the sea that leads to China. In fact, he is on Georgian Bay, part of the Great Lake Huron.
In view of its great extent, I have named it La Mer Douce, the freshwater sea.
From this moment on, it would seem that Champlain's ambition of finding a passage leading to the riches of Asia changes. As he paddles towards an unknown horizon, another dream begins to take hold of him.
Kichimigwech, Kichisipi Anishinaabe, Ho.
L'Acadie, à la mer Vermeille, du fleuve géant à la mer du Nord, au pays d'en haut, plein de merveilles. Je crois en toi, on nous plus fort.
Dans 400 ans, ce pays, toi le rêveur, fus accueilli, nourri, guidé par des peuples fiers,
montant ensemble la grande rivière.
M'accroche à ton grand rêve, pagayons, jusqu'au bout de la terre, dessinons ce nouveau monde, cette Nouvelle-France, comportons-nous avec puissance. Ils sont devenus mes rêves, ma passion. Sur tout le sol brûlé, cultivons un jardin d'idéaux, un monde plus beau. Le rideau se lève sur un monde nouveau.